The wind howled through the narrow valley of Epsilon Prime, kicking up swirls of dust as Elias Vance stepped out onto his cabin's porch. The sky overhead was painted in deep reds and purples, the setting sun barely visible through the dense atmosphere. He'd come here for the solitude to escape the tangled web of galactic politics and war. It had been 5 years since he last set foot on the Galactic Council station. 5 years since he turned his back on the diplomatic games that had cost too many lives, both human and alien. The silence was shattered by the chime of his long-dormant comm unit, a sound he had almost forgotten. He exhaled slowly, already knowing that whatever waited on the other end would not be good. With measured steps, he entered the small cabin, brushing aside a worn military jacket draped over a chair. The comm unit flickered to life, and a familiar face materialized in the air before him, Ambassador Helena Carter. Her auburn hair was pinned back, but the tension in her hazel eyes told him everything. "Vance," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "I need you back." He frowned. "That part of my life is over, Carter. You know that. I wouldn't be calling if it weren't urgent." She hesitated, and for the first time he saw something beneath her composure: fear. "The Zorik's Dominion has taken a child." His breath hitched. He had expected some political mess, maybe a border dispute, but this? "Who?" he asked, already feeling the weight settling on his shoulders. "Lillian Carter." The name hit him harder than expected. He had known Helena's daughter since she was a toddler, had watched her grow up on the council station. The idea of her in the hands of the Zoriks, the brutal, war-hardened species that had tested humanity's resolve more than once, sent a chill through him. "I assume the council is already negotiating," he said, forcing himself to think logically. "They're stalling," she admitted, her voice tight. "They see this as a test, a game of influence. The Zoriks are demanding unreasonable concessions, and half the council wants to appease them. And the other half? They want to use this as an excuse for war." Vance ran a hand down his face. "And what do you want?" "I want Lillian back," she said, her voice cracking for the first time. "And I need someone who knows how the Zoriks think. Someone who isn't afraid to push back." He turned away from the flickering hologram, staring out the window at the barren landscape. He had sworn he was done with this. No more politics. No more battles. But this wasn't about a war. It was about a child. "Send me the coordinates for the next council session," he said. The relief in Helena's eyes was instant. "Thank you, Vance." The transmission cut, leaving him in silence once more. But this time, it was the silence before a storm. The Galactic Council station was as he remembered, opulent, polished, and teeming with representatives from every major species. The air was thick with the scent of artificial oxygen filters and the faint hum of security drones moving overhead. As he stepped through the grand archways, all eyes turned to him. Some with recognition, others with barely disguised disdain. Humanity's place in the galactic order had always been contested. They were newcomers to the political stage but had earned their seat through sheer resilience. And Vance? He had been both a champion and a problem for many in this chamber. Helena met him just outside the council hall, her diplomatic robes barely concealing the exhaustion lining her face. "They won't make this easy," she warned. "They never do," he muttered, adjusting the cuffs of his travel-worn jacket. "Where's Zather?" "In the main hall. He's stalling, trying to get the council to cave before we can even mount a challenge." Vance nodded. "Then let's make sure that doesn't happen." The doors to the chamber slid open, and the sheer scope of the hall hit him. A circular arena, with hundreds of delegates seated in rising tiers, all focused on the center where a tall, armored figure stood, Overlord Zather of the Zorik's Dominion. His chitinous exoskeleton gleamed under the chamber's artificial lights, and his elongated jaw curled in something that almost resembled a smirk. "Ah, the human relic returns," Zather intoned, his deep voice reverberating through the chamber. Vance stepped forward, unfazed. "You have something that doesn't belong to you." Zather spread his clawed hands in mock innocence. "A matter of perspective, surely. The girl is merely a guest until her people understand their place." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some of the older, more established species, the ones who had been in power long before humanity arrived, watched carefully, waiting to see how this confrontation would unfold. Vance folded his arms. "I didn't come here for games. You're holding a child hostage to make a point." He turned to the assembled council members. "And the fact that we're standing here debating this instead of demanding her return is a disgrace." A few murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd, but they were quickly drowned out by political maneuvering. "Humanity is still young," a reptilian delegate from the Threx Confederacy spoke up. Perhaps this is a lesson in patience. Vance's jaw clenched. He had dealt with these games before, but this time the stakes were different. He took a slow step forward, his voice low but carrying across the chamber. Let me be clear. If you allow the Zorix to take this child without consequences, you set a precedent. Today it's Lillian Carter. Tomorrow, it's a child from the Threx Confederacy. Or the Valnari. Or the Kesri clans. Do you want that blood on your hands? The chamber fell silent. Even Zather's amusement seemed to dim slightly. Then the Overlord exhaled sharply, a low clicking sound filling the space. You presume to threaten me, human? Vance smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I don't need to threaten you, Zather. I just need you to understand what happens when you push humanity too far. Zather tilted his head, studying him. The room held its collective breath. Then the Overlord chuckled, a deep, resonant sound. Very well, human. Let us see if your words carry weight. With that, he turned sharply and strode from the chamber. The council erupted in discussion, but Vance ignored them. He turned to Helena, whose expression was unreadable. That wasn't diplomacy, she murmured. No, he admitted. That was a warning. And for the first time in a long time he knew this was far from over. The chamber had not yet settled when Vance left. The murmur of voices, the shifting of alliances and whispered conversations, all faded as he walked down the marble-floored corridor beside Helena. The council would deliberate, bicker and stall, but he had done what he came to do. He had delivered a message. Now the real work began. Helena moved with clipped urgency, her diplomatic robes swaying as she led him through a side passage. The official halls of the council station were pristine, but here, in the corridors where the real deals were made, the lighting was dimmer, the air heavier with the weight of unspoken bargains. The Zorix are watching everything, she muttered. You rattled them, but Zather isn't walking away from this. He never was, Vance said. He wants us to beg. He wants to teach us our place. She glanced at him. And what exactly is our place, Elias? He exhaled sharply, pausing at a security door. That depends on how far we're willing to go. The door slid open, revealing a small, private meeting chamber. A single figure waited inside, Commander Rhea Dawson, her uniform crisp, her expression unreadable. Vance hadn't seen her in years, not since his last mission under the Earth Alliance banner, but she had lost none of her sharpness. You look terrible, she said, arms crossed. Vance smirked. It's good to see you too, Dawson. She gestured to a holographic display in the center of the room. The blue-tinted image flickered to life, revealing a rotating model of a Zorix station, cold, angular, and heavily fortified. This is where they're holding her, Dawson said. Deep in Dominion space, a stronghold orbiting the gas giant Vranus 4. Standard garrison of Zorix shock troops, layered security fields, and a council observer on site to make sure they're negotiating in good faith. Vance studied the display, his jaw tightening. And the council observer? A Valnari delegate, Helena supplied. Neutral on paper, but we don't know where they actually stand. Dawson flicked her wrist, zooming in on the prison sector. If we wait for diplomacy to work, she'll either be dead or used as leverage for decades. A rescue mission is our best shot. Helena sighed, rubbing her temples. If this goes wrong, the council will condemn humanity as aggressors. The entire Dominion could declare war. Vance stepped closer to the hologram. They already have. They just haven't fired the first shot yet. For a moment no one spoke. The weight of the decision loomed over them, its consequences branching in every direction. Helena inhaled sharply. There's another problem. Vance looked up. Of course there is. She tapped a control on her wristband, and the hologram shifted to show a live security feed from the council chambers. A cloaked figure was speaking with Zather in hushed tones, their movements quick and calculated. The footage was grainy, distorted by interference, but the meaning was clear. There's a leak, Helena said. Someone on the council is feeding information to the Zorix. Vance stared at the figure, his mind already sorting through possibilities. Corruption wasn't new to the council, but if the Zorix had an inside source, every plan they made could be compromised before it even began. Do we have an identity? Dawson asked. Helena shook her head. Not yet. But if they're in direct contact with Zather, they're high-ranking. Vance clenched his fists. Then we have to move before they do. Dawson gave him a sharp nod. I've already got a team assembling. Stealth approach, surgical extraction. If we go in loud, we'll start a war. If we fail, we'll start a war. But if we succeed, humanity sends a message, Vance finished. Helena closed her eyes briefly, then exhaled. I can only cover for you for so long. If this is happening, it has to happen now. Vance looked at her, then at Dawson. The choice had already been made the moment he set foot on the station. Get your team ready, he said. Dawson's expression didn't change, but he saw the approval in her eyes. Already in motion. She turned and strode from the room, her presence leaving a void behind. Helena lingered, hesitation flickering across her face. Vance? He met her gaze, waiting. If you do this, there's no going back, she said. The council will paint you as a rogue. And if you're caught? He smirked. Then I guess I'd better not get caught. She didn't smile. Instead, she reached out, squeezing his arm once before turning and leaving him alone in the dim light. He turned back to the holographic prison, tracing the shape of the fortress with his eyes. Lillian was in there, surrounded by monsters, waiting for a rescue that might never come. He wouldn't let that happen. With a slow exhale, he straightened his shoulders and stepped into the dark corridor. The mission had begun. The Zorik's dueling ground was unlike anything Vance had seen before. A wide, circular arena of polished black stone, illuminated by the eerie glow of suspended energy orbs. Above, the vaulted ceiling of the council station stretched into darkness, where silent observers, delegates, officials and spies, watched from the elevated viewing platforms. The duel had been sanctioned, the ancient rite invoked, and now there was no turning back. Zather stood across from him, towering and monstrous in his ceremonial armor. His exoskeleton gleamed, each segment etched with jagged alien script. He flexed his clawed hands, the tips sharp enough to tear through flesh, and his mandibles curled into something resembling a smirk. Strange, Zather mused, his voice reverberating through the chamber. For a species so reliant on its technology, you choose to fight with bare hands. Vance rolled his shoulders, feeling the weight of the moment settle into his bones. He had been in countless battles before, but this was different. This was a statement. A warning. I don't need a blade to beat you, he said evenly. The arena's officiator, a tall, willowy Valnari, raised an elegant arm. The challenge has been accepted. The terms are clear, death or surrender. Vance focused, pushing away the noise, the tension, the expectations pressing down on him from all sides. Zather would want a spectacle, a slow, crushing display of dominance. Vance had no intention of playing by his rules. The officiator's arm dropped. Zather lunged. Vance sidestepped, barely avoiding the sweeping strike that sent a sharp gust of air past his face. The Zorix was fast, but Vance had expected that. He twisted, using Zather's momentum against him, driving an elbow into the creature's side. The impact was solid, but Zather barely staggered. A clawed hand lashed out. Vance ducked, rolling backward as the razor-tipped fingers sliced the air where his throat had been. Laughter. A deep, guttural sound. You fight like a soldier, Zather said, circling him. But this is not a battlefield. This is a grave. Vance exhaled slowly, measuring his breath, waiting. Zather would overcommit eventually. He was too arrogant, too confident in his own superiority. The Zorix struck again, this time feinting before twisting into a brutal backhand. Vance pivoted, taking the blow on his forearm. Pain shot through the limb, but he absorbed it, countering with a sharp kick to the knee joint. Zather grunted, stumbling. The moment was brief, but it was enough. Vance pressed forward, striking fast. Elbow to the sternum, knee to the ribs, a final hammering blow across the jaw. The impact sent Zather skidding back, his claws raking against the stone. For the first time, the Zorix's amusement faded. A ripple of murmurs spread through the watching crowd. Humanity was not supposed to hold its own against the Zorix in close combat. And yet, here was proof that strength alone did not dictate the victor. Zather straightened, his mandibles clicking. Interesting. Then he moved faster than before, adapting, learning. Vance barely had time to react as a massive clawed hand clamped around his wrist, yanking him forward. He twisted, breaking the hold, but not before Zather's other hand drove into his ribs. Pain flared through his side. Vance staggered, but forced himself to stay upright. Zather loomed closer, the scent of ozone and metal thick in the air. You cannot win. Vance wiped blood from his mouth. Maybe not. Then he dropped low, planting his hands against the stone and sweeping his leg in a sharp arc. Zather's footing faltered. Just enough. Vance drove upward with everything he had, slamming his fist into the Zorix's throat. The impact sent Zather stumbling back, choking, his mandibles snapping reflexively. The watching council members leaned forward, caught in the tension of the moment. Vance pressed the advantage, surging forward, but Zather recovered too quickly. The Zorix's claws raked across his shoulder, tearing through fabric and flesh alike. Pain ignited down his arm, but Vance gritted his teeth, using the momentum to spin and deliver a final, crushing elbow to the base of Zather's skull. The Overlord collapsed onto one knee, breathing heavily. Silence filled the arena. Vance took a step back, blood dripping onto the stone beneath him. He met Zather's gaze and saw something unexpected. Not rage, not humiliation, but something close to respect. The officiator's voice broke the silence. Overlord Zather. Do you yield? The Zorix's mandibles twitched, his breathing labored. His gaze never left Vance as he exhaled sharply and lowered his head. I yield. The chamber erupted into stunned murmurs. Vance exhaled slowly, willing his heartbeat to steady. He had won, but the real battle was still ahead. Somewhere deep in Dominion space, Lillian was still waiting. Far from the arena, in the shadowed corridors of a Zorix stronghold, Rhea Dawson and her team moved with practiced efficiency. The extraction had begun. The mission was now in motion. And there was no turning back. The air inside the Zorix stronghold was thick with the acrid scent of burning circuitry and the sharp tang of ozone. Emergency lights flickered in erratic bursts as Rhea Dawson and her team moved through the labyrinthine corridors, their footfalls silent against the polished obsidian floors. The mission had gone loud, sooner than planned. A security drone lay smoldering behind them, its delicate appendages twitching in death throes. The element of surprise was gone, but that didn't matter now. They were too deep to turn back. The only way out was forward. Dawson's earpiece crackled with static before Vance's voice cut through. Status. She pressed a hand to the communicator, eyes scanning the branching corridors ahead. Engaged. Had to neutralize security. Moving to target. Pause. Then, get her out. I'll handle the fallout. Dawson exhaled, steadying herself. Vance had played his part, winning the duel against Zather, forcing the Zorix into a position where they couldn't publicly retaliate. But the Overlord's surrender had been a tactical move, not a true defeat. The Dominion still had its claws deep in the Council, and there were those who wanted humanity put in its place. None of that mattered if they didn't get the girl out alive. She signaled her team forward. 2 operatives, Kara Ives and Malik Oren, flanked her as they approached the reinforced security door that led to the holding cells. The biometric scanner beside it hummed, awaiting a Zorix imprint. Oren knelt, placing a compact device against the scanner. A pulse of blue light flickered as the hacking tool worked its magic. Dawson gripped her rifle, keeping her focus sharp. How long? Oren's brow furrowed. They upgraded their encryption. Give me. The corridor behind them erupted with movement. A squad of Zorix enforcers surged forward, their exoskeletons gleaming under the emergency lights, weapons raised. Contact. I've shouted. Dawson pivoted, firing in controlled bursts. The first Zorix fell, its carapace splitting under the impact of high-velocity rounds. The others pushed forward, unfazed. Their weapons were slower but deadlier, plasma bursts that left nothing but scorched remains. Oren cursed. Almost there. A plasma bolt seared past Dawson's head, close enough that she felt the heat lick at her skin. She dropped low, firing upward into the chest of another enforcer. The creature staggered but didn't fall. Ives threw a flash charge, the concussive blast sending the Zorix squad reeling. Their advantage lasted seconds, but it was enough. The security door hissed open. Go! Dawson barked, covering their retreat as they slipped inside. The holding cells were sterile, stark, and silent, rows of energy-shielded enclosures humming with quiet menace. Most were empty. Most. Then she saw her. A small figure curled in the corner of one of the cells, her dark hair tangled, her face smudged with dirt. Lillian Carter. Her eyes, wide, frightened but defiant, locked onto Dawson. It's okay, kid, Dawson said, slinging her rifle. We're getting you out of here. The girl didn't move. She was young but smart enough to know rescue didn't always mean safety. Ives was already at the control panel, overriding the locks. Come on, Dawson urged, reaching a hand toward the child. Lillian hesitated, then bolted toward her. Dawson caught her, lifting her against her chest. She was too light, too fragile, but alive. Oren peered out the door. We've got more incoming. No time for a clean exit. Dawson tapped her earpiece. Package secured. We need extraction, now. Vance's voice came back sharp. Fallback point. She clenched her jaw. There isn't one. Another pause. Then, hold position. Hold position? That wasn't a plan. That was suicide. The corridor outside erupted again. This time with heavier footfalls, the unmistakable weight of something massive approaching. The Zorks were done playing. Dawson tightened her grip on Lillian. "Ives, get us another way out." "I'm trying," Ives snapped, working furiously at her wrist console. "The whole damn system is locked down." Oren fired into the hallway, forcing their enemies to slow. "Not gonna hold forever." Then, just as the situation seemed impossible, the ceiling above them shook. The lights flickered. A sound like metal screaming against metal filled the air. And then the entire north wall exploded inward. A ship, sleek, dark, and deadly, hovered just outside the breach, its side hatch open. Dawson barely had time to react before a familiar figure dropped into the wreckage. Vance. He moved like a force of nature, taking in the scene with sharp, calculating eyes before firing 3 precise shots into the corridor. The Zorik's enforcers fell mid-charge. "Move," he barked. Dawson didn't need to be told twice. She hoisted Lillian tighter and sprinted toward the breach. Ives and Oren followed, covering their retreat. Vance grabbed her arm as she reached the hatch, hauling them both inside before turning to lay down cover fire. Plasma bolts struck the hull, but the reinforced plating held. Oren was next through, then Ives, just as a fresh wave of Zoriks rounded the corner. Vance didn't hesitate. He slammed his fist against the hatch control. The door sealed with a hiss, cutting off the enemy's fire. The ship lurched as the pilot, whoever they were, gunned the thrusters. They shot away from the stronghold at breakneck speed, the black void of space swallowing them whole. For a long moment, there was only the hum of the ship, the rapid breaths of the survivors. Then Lillian let out a small, choked sob. Dawson looked down, brushing damp hair from the girl's face. "You're safe now." Lillian didn't answer, just buried her face against Dawson's shoulder. Vance leaned against the bulkhead, exhaling slowly. "Hell of a mess." Dawson shot him a look. "You could have warned us you were blowing a hole in the wall." His lip quirked. Didn't want to spoil the surprise. She rolled her eyes, but relief flooded through her. They had done it. Against impossible odds, against politics and war and the inevitable consequences still to come, they had done it. Lillian was safe. For now. Because the war this had started was far from over.